everybody, I'm Paulie G. Welcome back to the Paulie G Show, coming to you live from high atop Mount Georgia. I hope you're doing well. As for me, I am just getting over a little bout with the COVID, so I'm feeling a whole lot better today than I was a few days ago, but I can tell you that it was not a fun experience at all. And while I do recommend that you get your vaccines and boosters, if that's what you want to do, if you think they're going to prevent you from getting COVID, I can assure you they do not. So all I can recommend is that you be as safe and careful and stay as healthy as you can. And that's about all I can say about that. But I am doing much better, and I'm happy to say. So, all that aside, Gibson Dove. So, this is one of the premier models of the Gibson acoustic line. It bears great resemblance and has very much in common with its very close cousin, the Gibson Hummingbird, with which I think most people are probably a little bit more familiar. Both are the square-shouldered dreadnought design, among the first of the Gibsons. Before that, all of their acoustic guitars, their dreadnought acoustic guitars, were of the sloped shoulder variety, the J45, the J50, and the country western, for examples. The Hummingbird and the Dove would both have a premium spruce top. Both are bird themed, obviously. Both would typically have the split parallelogram inlays. And that's about where the similarities typically end, because where the Hummingbird would have a mahogany back and sides and would typically be of a cherry burst top finish, the Dove is a maple back and sided guitar. So they have very different sound qualities associated with those tone woods, but they're both, some of the top of the line Gibson acoustic guitars. The Hummingbird is much better known as sort of the Keith Richards guitar. I think he's probably the best known player of those. All of those late 60s, early 70s Rolling Stone songs that are acoustic oriented were all, no doubt, written and recorded on his various Gibson Hummingbirds. Whereas the Dove is better known. I know Elvis played one for a while. Tom Petty very, very often favored Gibson Doves. He had a number of them in his collection, and you see him playing them live and in videos quite a bit. But both are the, premium Gibson acoustic guitars for good reason. They're beautifully made, and depending on the year, these production began on the Dove in 1962, and that would have been in the Kalamazoo factory right up until the late 1980s. And there were times along the way that were not the finest years for Gibson acoustics in general. I had a Gibson Hummingbird from about 1975 that I can tell you had a lot of issues. That guitar was not one of the best acoustics I've ever had. I wound up giving it to someone that with the expectation that they would put the work into it and get it to be a better instrument than it is. But I wasn't really pleased with that one. But anyway, the reason this one, I think, is just an extraordinary piece of guitar awesomeness, and what makes it a rare Dove indeed, is you might notice, first of all, that it is a burst finish. In this case, it looks like a tobacco burst, and that's true on the back and sides as well. Whereas typically a Dove would have been a natural top and red stained maple back and sides. So that makes this one a little bit unusual, and my research tells me that this is one of only 12 bursts that were made in the year that this guitar was produced. Now, speaking of that, I think that's where this guitar has a much more interesting past. So the production date, according to the serial number of this guitar, is December 20th, 1989. Now, that's significant for a few reasons. So the Bozeman, Montana factory started production right around that time, which would have made this one of the very first guitars produced at the Bozeman, Montana factory under the design of Ren Ferguson. Now, that's very interesting because I don't know whether or not Ren actually built this guitar, touched this guitar, worked on this guitar, played this guitar. Do I know that to a certainty? No. But what I do know is that when he opened that factory in late 1989, he was one of only a very few hand-selected luthiers that were building these guitars. So I'd be very surprised to know that he didn't, at least on some level, participate in the production of this guitar. Now, the Bozeman factory is where things really started to get great with Gibson Acoustics. They went into major production in earnest in 1990, but in 89 is when they started to actually release a few guitars. And really, since that time, I would challenge anyone to point to a bad production year from the Bozeman factory. Every guitar I've ever played that came out of Bozeman was either good, very good, or fantastic. And I can definitely say that that is not true of the Kalamazoo years of acoustics. They had some fantastic years. The 40s and 50s and 60s were great. 70s and 80s, not so much. But when I saw that this guitar was available and found out the lineage of it and when it was made, I just had to have it. And it's been just a thrill to have. And it's one that I'm going to cherish, and it's just too lovely to sell. I'm not going to part with this one. And the interesting thing about it too is that of all the guitars that I have, the acoustics, for some reason, this feels more handmade than many of the other ones, and that includes my Martin and other guitars that I have. There's just some quality about this that just really feels like a handmade, guitar with very little machine tool effort put into it. I purchased it from a gentleman out west who had inherited the guitar, and the interesting thing, and you can tell from the condition, is that it's basically a brand new guitar. It rarely ever got played. It basically sat under a bed and wasn't touched for going on 25 or 30 years or so. So I was really, really lucky to find it. And the more I play it, I can tell that it's just opening up, and that hide glue is really starting to loosen up, and it's just sounding better and better. It doesn't have any electronics on it. I know, all of the acoustic guitars, pretty much almost everyone you buy except a Martin these days, a high-end Martin, is going to have, a pickup on it. This one does not, and to be honest with you, I don't care, because it's not a guitar that I'm going to take on live gigs. It is a guitar that I'll record with in the studio, but when I do that, I never use the pickups on acoustic guitars. I always use real mics for my acoustic guitars, because I don't think you get the sound out of a pickup in the studio like you'll get from a real natural guitar, with it being appropriately mic'd, which would be, mic on the 12th fret, mic near the bell. That's the best way to really get the sound of the guitar that you're playing. So anyway, just wanted to take a few minutes to share this one with you. I'm thrilled to own it. And until next time, this is Paulie G reminding you that when it comes to guitars, you only need one. More. See you next time.